listening and connecting on our shared values and connecting on our personal experiences. But before we do the activity, am I supposed to give you a signal or something?
You can or you can clicker to the door on that table.
Over here?
Yeah.
You got it? You're very helpful, thank you. Clickers are good. Before we do the exercise, I just want to kind of give some context on how this exercise fits in with the work that I do and the work that Pierce County Grassroots Organizing does, and why it's important to build these skills and practice them, because these are skills that we all have in our normal life when we're engaging with the people who we love, our friends and our family. The question is, how do you bring these skills with intentionality into our relationships in our community, with people who maybe are outside of our little circle? How do we make that circle wider, and use that skill? And it's okay if that doesn't work. I can just give you a signal. There's not that many slides. So just to let you know, I'm a community organizer. And what that means is that I work to bring people together within a neighborhood or a county or a state to try to solve problems that are affecting their community. I am a 6th generation native of Dunn County. My mother was a psychotherapist, and through her, she taught me the value of empathy and what it means to really sit down and be with people who are in pain. She worked with people who are struggling with addiction, trauma, veterans returning from war. And she taught me how to respond to that pain by helping. My dad was an engineer, very different than my mom, not the most emotional dude, but really taught me the value of critical thinking and how to solve problems. And he always said, don't try to fix something until you understand why it's broken. Thank you. So the combination of like my mom's value of empathy, my dad's values of critical thinking, really give me the foundation to do what I do today, which is to help people solve problems in their community that's causing them and others pain. So what we're going to practice today, I think, is at the root of a core skill of the work we have to do in our society today, if we're going to tackle the bigger problems that are causing, global pain. And so, as an organizer, this is the question that I'm waking up every single day asking myself. How do we get the power that we need to make the change that we want? And that word power, I think, is really important, because I think it's a word that we're not necessarily always comfortable using. We think of power as greedy CEOs and corrupt politicians, but for organizers, our power is in people coming together. And for us to be able to bring people together in a way that allows them to build power, it really starts with getting people to understand and see their shared humanity. And set down those divides that normally keep people apart and bring them together. Because when people are divided, that's when they're powerless. When people are unified, that's when they're powerful. So the question then becomes, how do we create that sense of shared humanity that people can feel and experience in their community? And how do we build relationships? Not just with the people who agree with us, but also the people who might not agree with us on everything. So what we're going to do on Saturday, May 7th, and I'll drop these. This is just a little bit of information about the training. If it intrigues you, you can take one of these with you. If you're not intrigued, and if you feel like this is not for you, no pressure, but the information you need is right here. I'll pass it around. The project that Pierce County Grassroots Organizing is going to be taking on this summer is where we are literally going from town to town in Pierce County and trying to knock on every door that we can and have a conversation with whoever will open their door and talk with us. And have a conversation that's intentionally structured so that by the end of the conversation, we've created a connection with someone who may not agree with us on everything, but we've found a place where we have something in common, and usually that thing that we have in common isn't politics, isn't our opinions, it is our values and our personal experiences and the stories that we bring from our life and the things that we care most about. So how do we, through the conversation, uncover those things with a stranger who we literally have just met at that moment at their doorstep? The hope is not just that we're having conversations and feeling good about them at the end of the conversation, but every conversation that we have is an invitation for that person to come take a step with us into the work that we're doing with Pierce County Grassroots Organizing, where by listening, by sharing, we can discover what it is that we need to work on to make change in our community. So that's the work we're doing, and that's the exercise that we're going to focus on today is just the tip of the iceberg for what we teach and what we practice through this thing that we call deep canvassing. Canvassing is just going door to door and knocking on people's doors. Deep meaning we're going deeper than just having a chit chat with them. So, questions on this before we get into the exercise? Reactions, reflections?
Is this like that Obama did? Are you doing what Obama did in Chicago? Because he was a community.
He was a community organizer, yeah. I don't know exactly what he did, but this is the heart of community organizing, is talking to the people in your community. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, probably very similar.
Yeah?
Yeah. So, how do we reach out? How do we connect? How do we build relationships that are authentic and real and meaningful? So what we're going to do is, I'm going to put some words up on the screen. And these are words that describe different values that different people have. And I want you to read through those words, and I want you to think about 3 of those values that really connect with who you are, values that you hold very dearly, very closely. As you look at those different values, I want you to think about where it was in your life, or who it was in your life that taught you to care so much about these things. How does that sound? Okay. I'm going to give you a few minutes to pause and reflect on these different values. Somebody willing to share what 3 values resonated with them?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, Nancy.
Thank you. The ones that hit me were responsibility, competency, and justice.
Responsibility, competency, and justice. Thanks.
All different,
Yeah.
all different lists. Humor,
Humor,
beauty,
beauty,
creativity.
creativity. One more? Willing to share?
Compassion, community, and friendships.
Compassion, community, and friendship. We all care about things, And often the things that we care most about are rooted in our experience, our life, our stories, the people we've known, the people we've loved, the things we've gone through. Often these are things that reflect not our, rational opinions, but really our felt experiences. So we try real hard when we're building relationships to start from a place of values and look to see if we can connect on values. And that's why we focus so much on experiences and stories in these types of conversations. So you have 3 values in your mind. I'd like you to think which one of those values, of those 3, is most connected to what brings you into this space today. Whether you've been coming into the Unitarian space for years, decades maybe, or maybe today's your first day. But what value do you think is most closely connected to why you're here in a space with other people who share these values that are on the wall or in the service? Which value connects with you the most?
Community.
Great. Okay, so it seems clear to you already?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What I want you to do is put that word in your mind. I want to ask you all to close your eyes for about 30 seconds. And I want you to reflect on why it is that you care so much about that value. Was there a moment in your life where that became very clear to you, why that value is so important? Was there someone in your life who taught you why that value is so important? Who was that person? What was that moment? Why was that person important to you? Thank you. You can open up your eyes, and would somebody be willing to share what that value was that you're reflecting on, and where in your life, when in your life it was that you learned to care so much, maybe from the side of the room? Yeah.
So, in community was one of my words too, so it was easy to think about this, but there were 2 things, and I'm sure Ann and Don relate to this to a certain extent, but when I was 23, I moved to Africa for a couple of years to work in a consulate there, and realizing the privilege that I had as a white person from a developed country gave me a sense of the importance of community. And when my first wife died, the rallying around the friends in Canada was hugely important.
Thank you. The reason we do this before we go into an exercise about listening and conversations is that when we're in a relationship with someone, that relationship starts with us. What we're bringing into the relationship, and getting really clear about who we are and what we care about before we ask someone to tell us the same, right? So doing that work is really important, and this is just like a very quick opportunity for you to reflect on your own life and what you care most about. And you're going to use that as the basis to go into an exercise where we're going to practice what it feels like to listen to someone share with us what they care about, why they care about it, what were those moments where they learned to care about it. We're going to practice what it feels like to listen to them, and then we're also going to practice what it feels like to be listened to. Because we live in a society where that's a pretty rare opportunity to really have someone deeply listen to us. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to ask you to get into pairs. I'm going to ask you to get into pairs with someone who you don't know real well. Maybe you know, maybe some of you know everyone in this room. But if there's someone who you're curious about and you'd like to know more, let's use this as an opportunity to connect with someone. ask you each to take 1 minute to just introduce each other. If, your name, where you're from, what you're doing here, whatever you want to share. And then we're going to take 10 minutes, and each of you is going to have a turn. For 5 minutes, one of you is going to share. You are going to share what your value was, that word, you're going to share the word, and then you're going to share what were the moments in your life, who were the people, what were the experiences you had that made you realize that that value was at the core of who you are. Okay? And then after 5 minutes, you're going to switch. And the other person is going to share their value, their stories, their experiences, and all those things.
Can
Yeah?
you put the list of values back up?
I will. Of values?
Yeah.
I will. Let me just share 2 ground rules for this exercise. So when you're sharing your value, and you're sharing those moments in your life. When you are listening, you're only doing 2 things. You are asking open-ended questions, and you are reflecting back on what you're hearing from that person. So, I heard that you were in Africa when you were 23, and you had this experience where you understood what it was like to be a privileged white person. Can you tell me more about that? So I just reflected back what I heard from David, and then I asked him a question. I'm hearing this, and I'd like to know more about what you just shared. That's the example of a reflecting statement and an open-ended question. So when you're listening, you're going to get the opportunity to feel what it's like for 5 minutes just to get more out of someone. Rather than, oh yeah, I had an experience like that too. I went to, like interjecting kind of, and that's okay too. What we're practicing is listening. Questions on this, and I will put up the values. Yes?
Will you, tell us when to, keep us on time?
I will. Yeah, when your 5 minutes is over, I'll tell you when your 1 minute to introduce each other is over. I'll tell you when your 5 minutes is over to switch, and then I'll tell you when that 5 minutes is over to come back, and we'll talk about it. Thanks, good question. Others? Okay. So, as requested, there is the list of values. I'm going to ask you all to stand up, if you can.